Hey guys, Mateo here, and here's my project presentation. Preface. This presentation is built in a Q&A format. I'll be reading the questions that an interviewer may ask, then answering them in my own voice. My portfolio is geared towards a front-end web development position. So it's the position that I really want to land by next year. First question. Tell me about yourself. I'm a recent web design graduate. I earned my bachelor's degree in December of 2015 through Westwood College online. While in school, I worked full-time as an operator, project coordinator at R.R. Donnelley, and in my spare time, I also freelanced as a graphic and web designer. Needless to say, I was short on time. Tell me about your work experience at R.R. Donnelley. Our team supports Paul Hastings Law Firm, a global business law firm. I work in a high-stress and fast-paced production environment. As an operator, project coordinator hybrid, I work mainly on projects that are due in less than an hour, some due in 15 minutes. I communicate with clients over the phone and through email to gather the details about their projects. I provide estimated time of arrivals once I have scoped the project, and I also pry for more information if there's anything missing. Once completed, I return the projects directly to my clients using Outlook. And email is our main source of communication. Many of the projects that I do involve using Microsoft Office Collection quickly and proficiently. We perform a lot of redundant Word tasks. We do TOCs, table of contents, and table of authorities. We do a lot of styling and word cleanup, preparing things for court filings. But sometimes we get the chance to do more interesting graphical things, such as presentations, and proposal pitches for clients and prospective clients. And we use PowerPoint or Microsoft Word for those. Tell me about your experience as a freelance designer. My first freelance project. I began freelancing as a graphic designer in 2012. My first project was developing an album art cover for a local band in New Hampshire called Dawn of the End. And I worked really closely with the lead singer to come up with this art that he had conceptualized in his head. And it was a battle between the sun and the moon. And that was the name of the album, Battle of the Luminaries. And I had a lot of fun working on this project. Did a lot of drafts, sketched, and then once he approved the sketch and he liked the art that I had come up with, the illustration I came up with, I put it together in Photoshop and it became what it is today. Later I moved to Phoenix and began networking. I landed a gig with the Arizona State University designing their invitations for a health education seminar. The seminar invited health professionals via a mail invite to discuss and address current events in their health industry. Later I began to focus more on web design projects. My first big web design project was for Phoenix Rising Now, a mom and pop shop geared towards alternative healing methods. Before I began with them, they already had a website up, but they weren't really happy with it. They just moved to a new location and they're starting over, and their old site looked like it was straight out of the 90s, so they wanted something new. While working with them, they actually introduced me to my next client, Marcella, and she did some Reiki work on me out of the shop, and after that we really hit it off, and I told her I would love to help her market her business, Eris Energy. Since she already had a website, I just reviewed what she currently had, and then I proposed a redesign that would target her audience better. I'd like to see some samples of your recent design work. Eris Energy's logo design. Eris Energy's logo is symbolic of the power hidden within the ethereal world around us. The infinity symbol represents the infinite energy loop that ties the physical realm to the spiritual realm. The number 3 embodies the power of threes and triangular forces. The next thing we're looking at is Eris Energy's website redesign. This is their old site, their old landing page. Marcella, she wanted a new site design that would represent her company's mission better. After getting to know Marcella and her business from the customer perspective, I went ahead and started to come up with the drafts for the redesign. But first I think it's important to take a look at the current design so we know where are we coming from. Let's go back to the homepage. So they have this graphic up here, which wasn't really a logo before. They got some text, homepage, some simple information here about Marcella. They have the healing therapies page and some text. It's a lot of plain text. There wasn't a whole lot going on. About Marcella again, and again about Marcella. In the contact form. I really like the contact form. Beautiful and simple. And then this payment method here in the footer. I thought that was a little fishy because if I'm a customer coming to your website for the first time and you're asking me for money, I'm not really going to give you a lot of credit. So that was the old site. Here's the new site that I proposed in my mockup. So this is my mockup redesign. New design was built using Photoshop. Artboards were used for various pages. For my client to view the new site design, I published the mockups at a URL on my personal server. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And let's go back to the home page. Boom. So what this is one big JPEG laid out onto an HTML page, published on my server so that I could provide her this link here and she could go and view the website mockup on her own time. And on the About page, just used a more compelling image and welcome text, made the text more dominant. And each section here is dedicated to telling our audience who we are, what we can do for them, engaging them with questions and photos, and then this beautiful grid layout here that is really prompting our users to take action, read more about our services. So she really loved that site design, and I was happy with that when I gave it to her. She totally loved that one. I got approval right away to go ahead and work on that. And then here is Phoenix Rising Now. This was my next client, or well, previous client, but the next work I want to talk about. Phoenix Rising Now. Here's our old site. Straight out of 90s.com, boom. Phoenix Rising Now, the redesign. They were a mom and pop shop geared towards alternative healing methods. Their old site just no longer represented their ideas. And after learning about their business, I did a competitive analysis and looked at the other local businesses in Phoenix, their websites, and to see what they were doing on their sites. And then I proposed my new design, and they really loved it right away. And here was the new design. Got the homepage, the About Us, events. This is a mock-up here, using Photoshop again, their new site design. It focuses more on inviting the customers to learn more about their products and services to increase the in-store foot traffic. And the new site design, we can actually go over to the website, Phoenix Rising Now. That was the old site. I just lost that. There we go. Here's the new site. These are all linked out. About Us page, events, our shop, and a contact page. So they really love this because it represented their business a lot better than the old site did. I'd like to hear about some of the technical challenges you faced when building these designs. Time management. Clients have very limited amount of time to invest, so it's really essential that you use their time wisely. And using the Adobe Creative Cloud has totally expedited my design process exponentially. Designing with intention. Each step along my design process requires research. I have to understand my clients, their needs, their audience, and then what their audience wants and expectations are. Once I've done my research, then I can begin to design to engage their target audience. Each page is dedicated to getting the users to take action. And you can't do that without first knowing what your audience wants and what your site's going to do for them. And one of my favorite tools, Adobe Muse. Muse allows me to draft site wireframes using the shapes and type tools, and it's really simple. Then you got the character styles panel, which you can use to quickly apply styling to all those elements that you draw out on the artboard. And with that, you can really make an amazing wireframe that represents the layout so much better than any other sketch could. One of the things that I love about Muse and how it helped me with my client Marcella is she was so busy that week that I made the wireframes for her that we couldn't meet so I could get her feedback on the wireframes. So Muse has this live export feature which allows you to actually export your design to a URL. And with that, I just served her the URL. She was able to go to that site and see the wireframes loaded in her screen, full size, just what the site layout would look like when we would get to designing and coding everything. And from there, I got the approval to move on to the mockups, which is the next challenge. And my go-to tool for mockups is always Adobe Photoshop CC because the artboard feature in that is so amazing. The tools allow me to build an entire site in one file using artboards and dedicating each artboard to each page. And as you saw in the Marcella's mockup design, all I had to do was export that as one large JPEG. In some cases, I'll export it as a PDF, and then they can scroll through the PDF and get the feel for what the site's going to be like that way as well. One of my favorite things and tools to use inside of Photoshop is Guide, because Guide allows me to draw guides quickly onto my artboards and design to a grid really proficiently, because all you have to do with Guide is, you have the width of your page, you come up with the column width of each column and the gutter width of each one, plug those numbers in and the margins you want to be set for the site, hit a button, and then bam, it runs the guides, and you've got all these guides on your artboard now that nicely snap your designs to the guides and to the grid that you've created. So that helps you to keep nice pristine design the entire time throughout the whole design process, and that's why Photoshop's my go-to. And then we move on. Coding begins. Enter Adobe Dreamweaver, my favorite web design tool. Adobe's library tool and quick export tool, which they introduced in this Creative Cloud collection, both quickly generate web assets so that I can focus more on the HTML and CSS side of things with Adobe Dreamweaver. Another thing about their interface is that those assets from my old Photoshop mockup I can just drag in. I can recycle those assets really quickly. So while I'm in Dreamweaver, I'm more focused on HTML5 and CSS3 elements and coding than I am on generating web assets and slicing things in Photoshop. Another great thing about Dreamweaver's interface is the built-in web browser. You can just write up your code. You got a design, you want to preview all that code, you can just go to the design view, hit live view, and there. You load that site design right into your software. So it's nice and easy because you have a web browser right in your software. You don't have to go file preview in web browser anymore, although it does help to see on other browsers, of course. So that's why I love Dreamweaver. It's one of my go-to tools, and always a challenge, integrating all these softwares. But with the Creative Cloud, it helps to seamlessly integrate these softwares so easily that you can focus on, the main design element or main coding of the site, or whatever it's going to be, whatever challenge you're facing at that time. My print portfolio is still a work in progress, but my concept, I've always wanted to do a printed book, and through the book I could tell a story with each client, and use what I'd like to do is design a story for each client kind of thing, and make the designs come across as more of a visual storytelling than of just kind of like pieces laid out on a page with text floating to the side and saying I did this. And then I figured it would be nice to print that book and give it to each recruiter after our first interview. But then I thought that might be too costly. Perhaps one book to take to each interview would be a lot better. And I wanted to show you the designer who inspired this idea, and that is Mr. Reyes, Miguel Reyes here. Jump up to his book, and here's his book design, really beautiful. And then jump down to some cool pieces, very minimal text. And then this one is the one that really struck me the most, because I feel like this tells a story through design, and that's what I want to do with my book. And with that, I want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my portfolio presentation. Love to hear your feedback, and have a good weekend, everyone.